Now, satellite images show what amounts to a 40-mile-long Russian killing machine moving towards Kyiv. The huge military convoy filled with tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery now raises fears of an all-out assault on the Ukrainian capital. At the same time, there is another troubling sign in a different strategic city, as surveillance video shows what looks like cluster bombs carrying out indiscriminate destruction in neighborhoods in Kharkiv. And as powerful explosions rocked an apartment complex, a missile strike targeted the city's square, one of the largest in Europe, and leading Ukraine's president to accuse Russia of war crimes while vowing to fight on for freedom in an emotional speech he gave to the European Parliament. Watch.
This is terror against the city. This is terror against Kharkiv, terror against Ukraine. It will not be forgiven. It will not be forgotten.
Can you imagine this morning, 2 cruise missiles hit this Freedom Square, dozens of killed ones. This is the price of freedom. We have proven our strength. We have proven that, as at a minimum, we are exactly the same as you are. So do prove that you are with us. Do prove that you will not let us go. Do prove that you indeed are Europeans. And then light will win over death, and light will win over darkness. Glory be to Ukraine.
After that standing ovation, let's go to Trey Yingst live in Kyiv. Trey?
Emily, good afternoon. Sirens continue to sound across Ukraine today as the Russians push forward with their invasion. In Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv, 2 cruise missiles hit a public square, Freedom Square, killing an unknown number of people. Officials calling that a war crime, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying it was undistinguishable from a terror attack. Now, this also comes as the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv today took missile strikes. Earlier this evening, a television tower was struck by a Russian missile, killing at least 5 people and sending more civilians underground to wait in shelters. Those who can't shelter in place and have the resources to go west are doing so. We were at the train station today as many families said goodbye. Take a look. A familiar scene unfolds in the Ukrainian capital. Uri Gretsenko says goodbye to his daughter and granddaughter. They're evacuating to the city of Lviv, near the Polish border.
We need to leave our homes to make our children safe. I never thought it would be like that. It's not a joke, but hell.
Like thousands of Ukrainian men, Uri will stay and fight as the Russian invasion continues.
My family, my daughter and granddaughter are leaving. I'm staying as I'm in the territorial defense.
People here are running out of time. There's a real understanding that Russian forces could surround the city in a matter of days. So the central train station in Kyiv is a major evacuation point for people looking to go west. The mood here is tense. There are checkpoints set up across the city. Ukrainian soldiers looking for Russian saboteurs, hoping they can block the roads before that big convoy of a nearly 40-mile-long load of Russian troops, artillery, and tank units comes to this city. Emily?
Trey, in addition to that harrowing footage you've been showing of the attempted evacuations and of the family saying goodbye, we also have video showing unarmed Ukrainians challenging Russian soldiers and telling them to go home. Let's play it. We'll get your thoughts on the other side, Trey.
Что, стрелять будете? Давайте, у меня нема ничего. Давайте, что такое? Вы ж братья долбаные, давайте. Давайте, что? Вы ж безоружные, вы ж любите это, давайте. Бандеровцы нахуй пришли, да? Давайте, пацаны! У нас земли на всех хватит. Давай!
Trey, what can you tell us about that resistance there on the ground?
You see these videos of incredible bravery by the Ukrainian civilians, not only here in the capital of Kyiv, but across the country. People standing in front of tanks and armored vehicles. They're willing to risk their lives, asking these Russian troops, why did you come here? It's the question on the minds of so many. Those who can fight are doing so, civilians and soldiers alike, getting as many weapons as they can, appealing to the international community for help and digging their heels in. Emily?
Trey Harris has a question for you.
You know, Trey, with those reports, and we were talking about this with Lucas Tomlinson earlier, that Russian troops are less than 5 hours away potentially. Where they're headed now would be toward one of the points where people can actually get out, and that's on the border with Poland. I mean, what would that mean for people? What options would they have if, in fact, that reporting yields truth and they reach in such a short period of time?
It's a great question. There's a massive humanitarian refugee crisis unfolding in parallel to this story of the Russian invasion into Ukraine, and it complicates things for the civilians here who are oftentimes caught amid the crossfire. I think the most concerning comment we heard today was from the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko.
Yes.
There are some reports today that the Ukrainians could consider targeting inside the territory of Belarus, since many of the missiles and fighter jets are taking off from there. Now, if this happens, Lukashenko, the leader there, says that carpet bombing is a possibility not only in this city, but across Ukraine. The devastating toll on civilians would be incalculable. Harris?
Trey, Kaylee here. You hear of carpet bombing and just your heart sinks. And you couple that with what we know, that a veterans rehab facility was shelled, a maternity hospital was shelled, schools have been hit, nurseries have been hit. And then you couple that with the reporting from NBC that there's a U.S. intelligence assessment that says Putin's been exhibiting unusual bursts of anger, and that he might see his only option way out of this is doubling down on the violence. We certainly hope not. But what are you seeing there on the ground?
People are doing everything they can to get out of harm's way. The video we showed yesterday of that mother waiting in a hospital with her daughter is heart-wrenching. I mean, these civilians who don't have the resources to go west simply have to go underground, and they're waiting out these shellings. But they will eventually run out of food and supplies and medicine, the things that we often take for granted, not in a war zone. And when they do, that ratchets up the tension here to such a level that people will still try to flee amid the crossfire, and the civilian casualties will likely rise. Back to you.
Trey, thank you so much for your insight and your analysis. As always, stay safe, and we'll bring you back soon.
Thank you.
Bringing in the rest of our panel now. Joey Jones, what does that 40-mile-long convoy mean tactically, strategically? What does it really mean for those in the ground?
Yeah. Thanks for asking me that question, Emily. And I actually want to address a couple of nomenclature things so people at home understand why these things are important as I get to that 40-mile convoy. First of all, the idea of using a thermobaric bomb, that's something that's been talked about all morning, that's been accused of a potential war crime, using it as a bunker buster. Let me explain what that means. That essentially means this is a sophisticated bomb that without any further explanation will set the air on fire. And what does that mean? It means that it can incinerate you from the inside out when it blows up. It sets the air in your lungs on fire. It sets the air around you on fire, and it does it through sophisticated means. So they call them bunker busters because if Ukrainian soldiers or even diplomats or government officials are hiding in bunkers, if this bomb can penetrate down into a cave, it can set the air in that cave on fire and incinerate what's in it. They're ruthless. They're similar to our mother of all bombs. They're all over the world. I've talked to a buddy a few minutes ago who's taken a bunch of them apart. The second nomenclature I want to talk about are cluster bombs. Cluster bombs are bombs that break apart in the sky and turn, or as they're flying from artillery or from a plane, and they turn into dozens, if not 50 or 100 small bombs. They're designed to blow up vehicles. They're actually an anti-tank munition is what is inside of them. But the reason why this is important is they have so many mechanisms within them that if they don't go off when they hit the ground, they can go off indiscriminately. You can pick one up and it'll go off. Kids could pick one up and it would blow up. It's just very ruthless. And these are things that are designed for conventional military, not to be used in an urban terrain. And so when we talk about these types of munitions, why it's such a shock is they really are indiscriminate, and the way they kill is very ruthless, and it's something that should never be used in this setting where Ukraine isn't even mounting an offense against Russian troops. It's fully offensive.
Very fast follow-up, Joey. What is the range of that hyperbaric bomb, the one that sets the air on fire? If it's dropped in a city without a cave, will it go forever?
No, it's big, but it depends on the size and type. You can employ such a bomb in different ways, from a helicopter, from an airplane. I believe from a helicopter, from an airplane. I don't know there's a ground-to-ground version, but they make them in different sizes because they're used for different reasons. And you put one into any kind of civilian residential building, it's a really bad day.
Yeah, it's a good point to make that distinction, because people have heard the mother of all bombs. I believe we use them on a tunnel complex in Afghanistan against the enemy. So this is military to military. But this actually is called, Joey, the father of all bombs. So Geneva Convention looks at this, it's like a step up, if you will. Well, and there's been some time since those things were deployed, right? So the technology has changed a little bit. But when you use that on a civilian population, I'm thankful of your knowledge today, because no one has described it as well as you, of what it does to the human body, and why the Geneva Convention would never allow this, and why they would see this as a war crime, that it would be used on a civilian population in a hospital or wherever it would be. You can't get away from it.
There's no excuse for it in this setting, in my opinion, and that's what makes this so ruthless. We have a lot of our viewers that are confused, and I think we should admit in this moment, there's a lot of propaganda out there from both sides. I reported over the weekend about the Snake Island 13, that they were dead. Now there's a report that they weren't. But I think what I want to say to our viewers is they didn't have to die for this to be an unjust war. They didn't have to die for their defiance to be inspirational, and it's not our job to report propaganda from either side. We're just trying to show our viewers the potential of what's happening in Ukraine.
Bringing in Rebecca now, you have proposed that the U.S. leads a massive NATO exercise. Tell us why.
Well, thanks for having me. I think at this point, just what Joey just explained to viewers, I think is so critical, because I think the next several days are going to be horrific, the images coming out. So even as we keep soft hearts and have compassion for what's going on, we need to have tough skin and strong minds, because what I'm fearful of is that this war could escalate further outside the borders of Ukraine. And so U.S. actions and NATO actions, as we support the people of Ukraine, which we ought to, are so important. So what I've argued is these threats that Putin continues to make, these veiled and not so veiled nuclear threats against NATO, that should signal to us that it is our turn now to demonstrate serious resolve, that is stepping into a NATO country, that any kind of crossing the threshold to nuclear employment, even if it's these theater, low-yield nuclear weapons, that would be crossing a line that the Russians will be made to regret. And so we need to demonstrate that resolve right now by strong NATO military exercises that includes U.S. Nuclear delivery systems in those exercises.
Great discussion, guys. Moving forward.